Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. So today we are going to study another chapter, but this is from grade 11, as many of you have requested me. So I finally got some time to start recording grade 11 videos as well. And so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start with grade 12. What I initially decided was from grade 12 to 11 to 10 to 9. That is how I'll be progressing. But few of you requested for grade 11, so I'm going to start with grade 11 videos as well. So this chapter that we are going to study today is the portrait of a lady. And the lady that we are going to mention here is a very old woman who is supposed to be the narrator's grandmother. And in the story, you will feel how strong bonds can be developed between a small age group and a very elderly age group also. And it will also reflect on some of the styles of living of people who live in village and people who live in urban areas. So there's a slight contrast between the way of living and way of thinking of urban and rural ideologies, principles, their belief, their faith, and everything. Because if you have seen people living in the rural areas, it will be very difficult to find such kind of people in the urban areas also. And most importantly, it will also help you realize that sometimes out of a busy schedules and out of a busy lifestyle, we forget to connect with our roots, our family members, our elders, and how it really impacts both of us in some way or the other. So let's start this chapter because it's a very, very beautiful story. And once you read it, by the end of the story, you'll be able to understand why this chapter has been really made. Okay. So my grandmother, like everybody's grandmother, was an old woman. So here my basically is the narrator, and he's a small boy right now. When he's talking about, we will start with him being a small person boy, then gradually his age will be increased. So now he's saying that my grandmother, like everybody's grandmother, so it is not possible to say that the grandmother was young because anybody's grandmother will be old by the age she is supposed to be called as a grandmother. She had been old and wrinkled, so you can say this is one physical characteristic that you should always remember if a question comes or if you have to remember. She was old and wrinkled. Wrinkled means, there are lines on the faces which depict that it is a loose skin. Okay. For the 20 years that I had known her, people said that she had once been young and pretty. So he had known her for only 20 years. Okay. Of course, because grandmother and the narrator cannot be of the same age. So grandmother says that I have memory of her for 20 years. For 20 years, I've seen her old. But people tell me that before 20 years, she used to be very young and pretty, and even had a husband. But that was hard to believe. Now here there is a line that says that she even had a husband, but it is very difficult for the narrator to believe why she had a husband. Like he is not able to understand that my grandmother even had a husband. My grandfather's portrait hung above the mantelpiece. Mantelpiece here means shelf, a normal shelf, in the drawing room. So he said that he had only seen his grandfather in the portrait. He has not been able to see his grandfather in real, but the portrait of a grandfather is hung above the shelf. He wore a big turban and loose-fitting clothes. His long white beard covered the part of his chest, and he looked at least 100 years old. So what is he trying to say? That when he compares his grandmother and grandfather, then they both have different looks. The grandmother used to look young and pretty, but the grandfather right now, when he sees, he feels that the grandfather looks like 100-year-old, as if he's already been, crossed his age more than 90, and he has a long white beard that is covering his complete chest. It is that long, imagine. Okay, and is wearing a loose fitting clothes and he has a turban on his head. Now, this all he is not seeing physically, but he is seeing through a portrait. There's a portrait that is hung above the mantelpiece. He did not look the sort of a person who would have a wife or children. That means he was, a person who has a wife or they have a family. They tend to be well dressed. They tend to be very soft and they tend to be very nice. But maybe because of some reasons, he's finding it very contrasting that the grandfather is looking so old and he's looking so strict, kind of. So he said that it did not appear that he may have a wife if I just look at the picture. He looked as if he could only have lots and lots of grandchildren. Now, because of his age, also, he says that his portraits felt that he could only have children and not a wife, which is practically not possible. As for my grandmother being young and pretty, the thought was almost revolting. Now, see here, first of all, you need to understand the meaning of this phrase. The meaning of this phrase is difficult to believe something. Okay. Yeah. So the narrator is saying here that it was quite difficult to believe. Now, why it was difficult to believe? Because grandmothers and grandfather, they both were opposites. They did not look good together. Grandfather looked like he's 100-year-old. He looked very awkward, but grandmother was really young and pretty. So the question that popped up in the narrator's mind was, what did she see in my grandfather, and what did what did the family see in the grandfather that they got her grandmother married to? So he was not convinced with the fact that grandfather and grandmother, they had very different personalities, they had very different outlook. So it was very difficult to believe the thought that his grandmother married this kind of a person was a very revolting thought. He could not believe, it was difficult to accept this fact. She often told us of the games she used to play as a child. So she also used to discuss the kind of games that she used to play. She here is the grandmother. That seemed quite absurd. Absurd means awkward. Okay, so the games were very awkward and undignified on her part, and we treated it like the fables of the prophet she used to tell us. So fable here are short stories. Okay, fable here means short story, and prophet means you can call them directly as saint. Okay, so now what they say that she used to tell us many different things. She used to tell the games that she used to play when she was a child, and the games were completely awkward. Okay. And then she used to tell them the short stories of the same that she, had in her mind, or somebody must have told her. She had always been short and fat and slightly bent. So again, you can say first she was short, then she was fat, then she was slightly bent. Now, see, slightly bent here means whenever somebody gets old, they tend to bend. Their waist bends because they cannot hold themselves right. Most of them do, but many of them, they want to have some support because they cannot balance themselves. And one more point that was written in the starting was old and wrinkled. So now there are so many things that you have read here that can easily define the physical characteristics of the grandmother. She was old and wrinkled, she was short, she was fat, and she was slightly bent. Her face was a crisscross of wrinkle. Crisscross means full of. Of course, when she's old, she will have wrinkles, running from everywhere to everywhere. No, we were certain she had always been, as we had known her, old, so terribly old that she could not have grown older and had stayed at the same age for 20 years. Now, what the narrator is trying to say that what we feel is she has not changed much in 20 years. She has almost been the same. Only a few changes have been observed in her, but she's as same as she was before 20 years. She could never have been pretty, but she was always beautiful. So what is the narrator trying to say here? That she was not very pretty, but she was good looking. She hobbled around the house in spotless white with one hand. Now here spotless white means what? And hobbled around means to move in different places. So you can say here as hobbled means here moving. So she moved about the house in spotless white. Spotless white is sari of white color, and there was no spot on it. Spotless. Spotless white means complete white without a single spot. So she used to wear a white sari which was spotless, and she used to move here and there everywhere with one hand resting on her waist to balance her stoop. Stoop here you can call it as a waist. I mean, the stoop here basically means to balance her body. You can just understand it like that. So now what she used to do, she used to hold one stick to balance herself because she used to slightly bend. So when she's bending, she need to have one hand or something so that she could balance that. So she used to have a stick in one hand so that she can bend easily. And what was there in the other hand? And the other telling the beads of a rosary. So rosary here, if you call in Hindi, it is called as mala. You must have heard. And rosary is a mala, and there are certain beads in rosary. The parts, small parts. So she used to speak. Telling here means she used to recite something. You must have seen people carrying Rudraksh mala and all, and they keep doing like this 108 times, and they chant some kind of shloks or mantra. So this is what she used to do. In one hand, she had a stick with which she took support, and in the other hand, she was carrying the rosary with some beads, and she used to speak. Telling here means she used to recite something. She used to speak something. Her silver lock here means silver hair, white hair. Now, when somebody gets old, their hair turns to white. Were scattered untidily over her pale, puckered face, and her lips constantly moved in inaudible prayer. See, puckered face here means a very dull face, which has no shine. Now, when you talk about some old person, it is difficult to imagine that she can have a very bright face. Skin becomes dull, there are wrinkles all over. So, puckered face here means not a very soothing, not a very calm or attractive face. So, that hair, that white hair, they were tied, but they were tied in a very bad manner, in a very haphazard manner, and they used to come over her face, and her lips used to constantly move. Like I told you, she used to have rosary, she used to speak something, but it was inaudible, she cannot hear it. Inaudible here means something that you cannot hear. Okay, cannot hear. Yes, she was beautiful. Now, again and again, he's saying she was beautiful. Why? Because see, there are two reasons for narrator to call her grandmother beautiful. When you are small, okay, when you look at your mother will always be beautiful. No matter if in reality she is not. You will have that love for your grandmother or your mother. So this beautiful also means that the narrator liked her grandmother, no matter even if she had wrinkles, no matter if she was old, no matter if she had white hair spread all over her face, but the narrator always found her found her grandmother beautiful because of the lovely bond that he had shared. She was like the winter landscape in the mountains, an expanse of pure white serenity, breathing peace and contentment. See, an expanse of pure white serenity simple means she was very calm. When you can see her, first of all, white color is a symbol of peace. So she used to wear that white all over. She was very calm, and she used to feel like the breeze, when you see the landscape in a mountain, when you see the scenery of a mountain, you feel so much of peace and contentment. When you go to hills, you see everything is quiet, everything is calm. So she was like the same. The narrator is comparing here the grandmother to the peace, that the peace is similar as you see the peace in the mountain. When you see the grandmother, you will feel the same kind of peace and contentment as you go to the mountain, and you will see the same. My grandmother and I were good friends. Now, here he's trying to develop. First, in the first paragraph, he has introduced you to how his grandmother looked like. Now, he will discuss about the bonding that he had. My grandmother and I were good friends. My parent left me with her when they went to live in the city, and we were constantly together. So, the storyline here is that the grandmother and the narrator were very good friends, and they used to live together in a village. And the parents had gone to the city. Now, why they had gone to the city? Because they wanted a better life for their son also and for their mother also. So, first they had gone to the city to settle, to find out the house, to collect some money. Okay, so now they have gone to settle in the city. Meanwhile, they have left their son to their mother. So, the narrator and grandmother, they live together. She used to wake me up in the morning and get me ready for school. So, the very first thing she would do was she used to wake the narrator up and ask him to get ready for the school. She said a morning prayer in a monotonous sing song while she bathed and dressed me in the hope that I would listen and get to know it by heart. Monotonous means boring. So whenever she used to she used to go for bath, and she used to dress the narrator up. She used to constantly sing a song in the form of a prayer. So constantly she was saying a morning prayer, and sometimes she used to sing it normally, sometimes she used to sing it in a song. But it has become very boring. Every day she would do that in the morning. But there was an intent. There was a reason behind speaking this prayer, because the grandmother wanted the narrator to learn it by heart. होता है ना, जब आपके घर में कोई बार बार कोई चीज बोल रहा होता है, हम कहते भी हैं कि बच्चों के सामने कुछ भी गलत वर्ड्स नहीं बोलने चाहिए, वरना वो तुरंत सीख लेते हैं. सो द ग्रैंडमदर intentionally intendedly wanted to recite those prayer in the form of a song so that the narrator could understand or learn it by heart. I listened because I loved her voice. Now, what is the narrator saying here? He only listened to the morning prayer because he loved the voice of the grandmother and not the prayer. He was not interested in the prayer, but he loved the voice of his grandmother, so he heard, but never bothered to learn it. Then she would fetch my wooden slate, which she had already washed and plastered with yellow chalk, a tiny earthen ink pot, and a red pen, tie them on in a bundle, and hand it to me. So you can just understand from these four lines. Now you go to your school, you carry a pencil, a box, and bag, and notebooks, and diaries, and so many things. But we are talking about this time when the narrator was learning and studying on the slate, on a wooden slate. He was just learning things in a wooden slate. So imagine how old times we're talking about, right? So he had a ink pot also. He did not have a proper pen as well. And then he used to, she used to tie everything into this bundle and give it to the narrator that this is your thing that you have to go to the school and study. After a breakfast of a thick stale chapati, stale means something which is not fresh, old. It is old, okay? With a little butter and sugar spread on it, we went to school. So he used to just have a stale chapati with some bread, butter on it, and then they used to leave. Who used to leave? The grandmother and the narrator. She carried several stale chapatis for her for the village dogs also. So one of the aspect of grandmother here is she loved feeding animals also. That you will study in later part of the story also. She was a very kind-hearted woman. She used to prepare chapatis, and the stale chapatis that were left, this first, the narrator and the grandmother, they used to have it, and second, she used to give those stale chapatis to the dogs also while they were on the way. My grandmother always went to school with me because the school was attached to the temple. So suppose if this is the school and this is the temple, this is school, this is temple, so they were almost near. They were not completely attached, but they were near to it. So when the narrator used to go to the school, the grandmother used to go to the temple, so they both accompanied each other. The priest taught us the alphabet and the morning prayer, while the children sat in rows on either side of the veranda, singing the alphabet on the prayer in a chorus. Chorus means together. My grandmother sat inside reading the scriptures. Scriptures is religious book. So what is the thing that they're telling here? What was the scene of the school that they used to go? Children used to sit, there was a veranda. Children used to sit on either side of the rows, like one this side and the other opposite. Okay. And they used to recite, they used to chant the prayer along with the alphabets. They were reading alphabets also. And there is one very important difference that I want to tell you between an alphabet and a letter. Letter are A. Single, this is a single letter A. This is a single letter B. We don't call them alphabets. When they are completely together, like if I say there are 26 letters in alphabet. So those 26 are the alphabets, but A, B, C, D, these are letters. They are not alphabets. Okay. So they used to learn alphabets, complete 26, and they used to recite the prayer also. When we had both finished, and the grandmother used to read the old books or the religious scriptures. When we both had finished, we would walk back together. This time, the village dogs would meet us at the temple door. They followed us to our home, growling and fighting. Growling is making some kind of a noise when the dogs make noise, and fighting with each other for the chapatis we threw to them. So meanwhile, when the grandmother used to come back home, on the way she used to throw the chapatis, pieces, bits of chapatis to the dog, and the dogs would also follow the grandmother and the narrator because they would find those pieces and they would fight who would eat. A simple thing that would happen on the road. When my parents were comfortably settled in the city, now in the second paragraph, I told you that the parents had gone and they were planning to settle. Now, in the third paragraph, you will see that they are already settled. They sent for us. Sent for us means they said, they called them that you both should come in the city now. Now their village life is going to change into the city life. That was a turning point. Turning point means a very important change. This turning point is not only a change, but a very important change. And it is going to be in very different variety. Although we shared the same room, my grandmother no longer came to school with me. I used to go to English school. So now here there is a difference. When the grandmother and the narrator they shifted to the city, now the grandmother did not accompany him to the school. Why? Because now the narrator has changed his school to an English school, and there was no temple near it. अभी तक क्या था कि grandmother used to follow narrator because there was temple also. She used to read scriptures sitting there. But now the situation has changed. They have gone to a big city. Now he is going to a very good English medium school, and grandmother cannot follow him in a motor bus. There were no dogs in the street, and she took to feeding sparrows in the courtyard. So now she could not find dogs, but what she found sparrows. And courtyard here means an open space in the house. It would be at the back. Okay. So she found an open space at the back of the house and she used to feed sparrows. As the years rolled by here simply means passed by. We saw less of each other. For some time, she continued to wake me up and get me ready for the school. When I came back, she would ask me what the teacher had taught me. I would tell her English words and a little of Western science and teaching. Now things started changing. Initially, when he was in a village, when the grandmother used to ask her, okay, what did you learn today? So he used to tell, I learned this mantra, I learned this prayer, I learned the alphabet. All those topics were related to the grandmother. The grandmother was not very educated, but she knew, okay, this is the idea. Now, this is what I was telling you in the starting of the chapter, that the grandmother wanted values to be taught in the school. Children should learn Gayatri Man. Children should know things that is important for their, personality and behavior. She wanted values based school. She wanted values to be taught to the children along with other things. Values should not be ignored. If you're studying science, English, math, you should also learn about the core principles of your life, the core values, the educational aspects that you also want to study. So this is what the grandmother wanted. So she used to feel very happy. But now this thing changed when they shifted to the city. What happened now when grandmother used to ask narrator, what did you study today? He used to tell some English words and science. Now, what he used to tell, he studied the law of gravity, Archimedes' principle, the world being round, all these kind of topics. Now, the grandmother has no relatability to it. The grandmother did not know what is the law of gravity or the Archimedes' principle. So, there was no connection. Now, try to understand. See, when we talk to somebody, we have mutual interest, something that is common to both of us. If I am recording a video and you are watching it because it is of your interest, because it is in your syllabus, if I start making video of something which is not of your interest, you will not watch my videos because there is nothing common in between us. So that commonality between grandmother and the narrator, it broke because now the topics were not related to the grandmother, and she also did not feel happy that there was no mention of the value education. She said that you're only learning these kind of practical things. What about the values? Where are they lost? That was not being taught in the school, and this made grandmother unhappy. She was not happy to hear that. She could not help me with my lessons. She could not help. Why? Because she did not know what is law of gravity. How can the grandmother help the narrator? She did not believe in the things they taught as the English school and was distressed. Distress means sad. That there was no teaching about God and the scriptures. That is what I told you. One day I announced that we were being given music lessons. So one day narrator came to the house and he said that now we are being given some music lessons. She was very disturbed. Hearing this, she got really annoyed. Why? Because to her, music had lewd associations. Lewd here means vulgar, something which is not in a very good taste, which is something disrespectful. Okay. Lewd association means music is associated to people who do not have a respectable position in the society. Now, take it as an example. In the earlier times, people used to play something and ask for money or begging. है ना? हम कई बार कहते थे कि अगर कुछ नहीं हो तो भाई गाना बजाना करके पैसे कमा लेना, एक कॉमन फ्रेज होता था. सो वो उस तरीके से उस चीज को ले रही थी कि म्यूजिक तो एक बहुत ही अनकल्चर्ड चीज है, एक बहुत ही वल्गर चीज है. इसको तो छोटे छोटे लोग जो जिनके पास कुछ होता नहीं है, जो रिस्पेक्टेबल पोजीशन पे नहीं होते हैं, वो इसका काम करते हैं. अब दिस इज नॉट रियलिटी, but because the grandmother was old, वो उनके जमाने की सोच थी, तो she was not happy hearing this. It was monopoly of harlots and beggar. Harlots and beggar, or harlot you can say as a vagabond, जिनका कोई घर नहीं होता. मोनोपोली मतलब ऐसे ही लोगों का ग्रुप, ऐसे ही लोगों की एक कम्युनिटी थी जिनके पास कुछ पैसा वैसा नहीं था और वो म्यूजिक सुनते थे, वो म्यूजिक को सीखते थे. अच्छे घर के लोग इसको नहीं सीखते थे. And was not mental for gentle folk, like I told you. She said nothing, but her silence meant disapproval. Now, what can she say? She could not say anything, but she was quiet because she cannot directly say that stop going to the school. She cannot do that. But her silence meant disapproval. That means she did not approve of such things. She rarely talked to me after that. And probably after this, when she got to know that he is learning lessons, they did not talk much. When I went up to the university, I was given a room of my own. The common link of friendship was snapped. Snapped means taken away. अभी यहाँ पे क्या बात हो रही थी? The narrator was still here, was going to school. They were living in the same house, but now living in the surroundings. You can say that they were almost together. Now, when he had started going to the university, the narrator was given a room of his own. Now they were in the same house, but the room had changed. Abhi the grandmother and narrator was in the same room when they were in the school, but now when he went to the university, the room changed. He was given a separate room. Now that common link was completely broken. Up to the narrator would go to the university, come back to the room, go to the university, eat food. That common link was again broken up. My grandmother accepted her seclusion with resignation. See, seclusion मतलब यहाँ पे होता है separate. अब resign करने का क्या मतलब है? Without objection. Without objection. There's a very deep meaning behind this thing you need to understand. Accepted her separation. She accepted the separation. Separation from who? Separation from the narrator. Why? Because since childhood, the grandmother is staying with the narrator only. बचपन से वो दोनों साथ थे. पर अचानक से उसको एक अलग रूम दे दिया गया. So the grandmother, she did not object to it. She did not do anything. She completely resigned. That means she was quiet. She accepted her separation without any objection. She said, okay, fine, which is a very big thing for the grandmother because since childhood, they both have been living together. She rarely left her spinning wheel to talk to anyone. Spinning wheel again, that rosary bead they're talking about. So now she stopped talking to most of them and she only used to do her chanting of the prayer. From sunrise to sunset, she sat by her spinning wheel and reciting prayer. Only in the afternoon, she relaxed for a while to feed the sparrows. So from sunset to the sunrise to sunset, like from morning to evening, she used to only sit in her room, do that thing with the rosary beads, and only in the afternoon she would go to the veranda in the courtyard and feed the sparrow. That was a normal routine. While she sat in the veranda breaking the bread into little bits, hundreds of little birds come round her, creating a veritable bedlam of chirrupings. Now, veritable here means visual, something that you can see. And bedlam here means confusion. Okay, and chirping means the sound that is made by the bird. So when she used to break the bread into certain pieces, there were hundred of birds that used to come. So there was some kind of noise of the birds chirping. She constantly there was chirping sound that created some kind of confusion also. Like who's there in the veranda? What kind of noise is being made? So those noise were the noise of the birds chirping because they used to come to eat the bread that the grandmother fed. Some came and perched on her legs. Perched means sit. So some of the birds used to even sit on her legs and other on her shoulders. The birds will sit on the shoulder also. Some even sat on her head. So I mean the birds were also connected to the grandmother because the grandmother was kind of feeding them. She smiled but never shooed them away. Shoot them here is means that you say shoot to go away. So the grandmother never minded. The grandmother did not object the birds when they sat on the shoulder, they sat on the head, they sat on the knees. Grandmother did not have a problem with it. However, very happily she accepted. She said, "Okay, let it be. If they want to sit, they can sit." It used to be the happiest half hour of the day for her. So for half an hour, she used to do that, and it used to be a very happy day. When I decided to go abroad, now it is like you can say masters or post graduation. Okay, now for that he wanted to go abroad. I was sure that my grandmother would be upset. So when the narrator decided to go abroad, it was very clear in his mind that the grandmother would not be very happy because now she will not be able to even see his grandson. I would be away for 5 years. So this was 5 year visit he was going outside. And at her age, no one could ever tell, but my grandmother could. I would be away for 5 years, and at her age, no one could ever tell, but my grandmother could. She was not even sentimental. She came to leave me at the railway station, but did not talk or show any emotions. Such a lovely person she was. In the heart, she wanted the grandson to be in the house, but she did not speak anything. She was being very emotional. She was being very sentimental, but she did not express it completely. Her lips moved in prayer. Her mind was lost in prayer. I mean, she was continuously in the prayer. She was lost somewhere because that was a little shock to her. Now it is going to be a span of 5 years that she is not going to see her grandson, and she had a very special connection with him. So she felt some kind of a sadness inside her, but she did not express it. She was just lost in her prayer. Her fingers were busy telling the beads of a rosary. Silently, she kissed my forehead, and when I left, I cherished the moist imprint. Imprint here means mark. See, when you kiss somebody, so there is some kind of a moistness that comes. So when the grandmother silently kissed the narrator on the head, there was some moist imprint or moist marks on his head, as perhaps the last sign of physical contact between us. Now, with this line, the narrator is trying to show you that he had some fear in his mind कि ये जो एक कांटेक्ट हमारा हुआ है फिजिकल कांटेक्ट ऐसा ना हो कि ये मेरा आखिरी कांटेक्ट हो इनसे क्योंकि अब मैं 5 साल के लिए जा रहा हूँ my grandmother is already old and I hope and wish that this should not be the last time when I am watching her. But that was not so. But luckily, it did not happen. After 5 years, I came back home and was met by her at the station. Again, when he came back after 5 years, the grandmother was there to greet him at the station. She did not look a day older. Like I told you in the starting of the chapter, also, she did not have much change. She still had no time for words, and while she clasped me, clasp means hug. To clap here means to hug. When she clapped me in her arms, I could hear her reciting a prayer. Even on the first day of my arrival, her happiest moments were with her sparrows, whom she fed longer with frivolous recuse. Frivolous here means something which is not real. Okay, it is not real. And rebuke means mild scolding. So when the narrator came, She was again very happy, but again the happiest moment was with the sparrow. Okay, she was reciting her prayer when she went to see the narrator. She hugged him also, and when she came back, she again started feeding the sparrow for half an hour. And frivolous rebuke here means she used to scold the birds. जैसे हम किसी नाटक में डांटते हैं ना, मजाक में डांटते हैं किसी को, जो कि रियलिटी नहीं होता, तो इस तरीके से वो प्रिटेंड करती थी जैसे वो चिड़ियों से बात कर रही है. She is talking to the sparrow and she is scolding them, and it was a mild scolding in a very fun manner. In the evening, a change came over her. Now, that very evening, there was a change when he came back. And the change was not in the narrator, it was in the grandmother. She did not pray. Now, since the starting of the chapter, you are hearing that she used to pray, she used to chant, she used to recite. Continuously, you are hearing it. But now what? She did not pray. She collected the women of the neighborhood, got an old drum, and started to sing. For several hours, she thumped the sagging. Thumped here means beating. That's very important for you to know. You can call it as hitting or beating, huh? The sound that comes after hitting and beating. So what was she beating? She was beating a drum. I don't know if you know that it is a kind of a dholak with two edges. Okay. And a dilapidated drum means which is in a very bad condition, shabby condition. Okay. So the drum was in a very bad condition and the skin of the drum was loose. That means it was not a very new one. It was almost a bad one. And sang of the homecoming of warriors. So she was singing a song which had, what was the theme of that song? Some warriors have come back home. That she was singing a song, but she did not pray. We had to persuade. Persuade means convince. We had to persuade her to stop to avoid overstraining. Overstraining means she was taking so much of strain. She was beating the drums and she was singing. So the narrator's family had to tell her that you are old and you should not be doing this because it is going to not work in your favor. You may feel really ill or tired. That was the first time since I had known her that she did not pray. So only that day he saw that the grandmother did not pray. The next morning she was taken ill. And as a result, again, she was ill. It was a mild fever, and the doctor told us that it would go. But my grandmother thought differently. She told us that her end was near. So because of the overstraining, or I don't know, whatever the reason could be, next day when the grandmother woke up, she was with fever, and the doctors, when they checked the grandmother, they said that this is a very normal fever and it will go away. But the grandmother had different opinion. She said that I don't think I'm going to live any longer. I am going to die. So maybe it was an intuition that the grandmother had already intuited that maybe it's my end. She said that since only a few hours before the close of the last chapter of her life, she had omitted to pray. She was not going to waste any more time talking to us. And in reality, also, I mean, it is always said, I don't know if you must have heard stories that people who are going to die, they can relate that they're very close to the they're very close in terms of their death and they get some kind of intuitions. We protested, but she ignored our protest. She lay peacefully in bed, praying and telling her beads. Even before we could suspect, her lips stopped moving and the rosary fell from her lifeless fingers. A peaceful pallor, it is like a yellow color, spread on her face, and we knew she was dead. So when she realized that she is going to die, what was the first thing that she did? She again started praying. Now the family objected. The family said that you are already very weak and you know don't do that. You talk to us. Maybe it is your last time. You should spend that time talking to us. Spend some time with us. But the grandmother completely refused. She said that I am not going to do this. I am simply going to pray. And that is what I'm supposed to be. And before the people of the family could actually understand what had happened to her, she died. The lips started moving, lips stopped moving, and the fingers that she was using to do this rosary bead, that also stopped, and that was a sign that she is lifeless, she is dead. We lifted her off the bed, and is customary. Customary means according to the custom. Laid her on the ground and covered her with a red shroud. Shroud is like a red cloth. After a few hours of mourning, mourning here means when you are sad and you mourn, you know, expressing your grief, that is known as mourning. We left her alone to make arrangements for her funeral. So they kept the dead body there only, and then they left to collect items for the funeral. In the evening, we went to her room with a crude stretcher to take her to the cremated. Stretcher here means you must have seen that's a long thing on which the dead body is kept. So the family went to bring a stretcher, and now she was supposed to be cremated. The sun was setting and had lit her room and veranda with a blaze of golden light. Now, sun was setting means it was quite the evening, and there was a very fine line of golden light entering her room. We stopped halfway in the courtyard, all over the veranda and in her room, right up to where she lay dead and stiff wrapped in the red shroud. Thousands of sparrows sat scattered on the floor. Now, see who has come to bid the last goodbye to the grandmother, it was the sparrow. She used to feed hundred of sparrow, but today there were thousands of sparrow that had come. They had not come to eat the bread. They had come to bid the last goodbye to the grandmother. There was no chirping. Even the sparrows are mourning. They're expressing their grief. So they were not chirping. They were not making some kind of sound. We felt sorry for the birds, and my mother fetched some bread for them. So the hunter and the family, they really felt bad for the birds, and they thought that let us do something, let us give some bread crumbs to them, maybe they will eat. She broke it into little crumbs the way my grandmother used to and threw it to them. The sparrows took no notice of the bread. So the sparrows did not eat that pieces of the bread on that day when the grandmother died. When we carried my grandmother's corpse off, they flew away quietly. And when corpse here means the dead body. So when the grandmother was taken from the house, the sparrows also went away very quietly, and they did not eat anything. They just had come here to see the grandmother for the last time. And of course, animals have emotions. You know, if you feed a dog, the dog would always remember you and follow you wherever you go. So animals do have emotions as well. It is we who do not understand. So the birds were so attached to the grandmother that they really felt that they could, if the grandmother does not exist, so they have no point in being there. Next morning, the sweeper swept the breadcrumbs into the dustbin. So next morning, when the sweeper came, he just threw or dumped those breadcrumbs into the morning. So this was a story that I have always personally felt very close to, because all of us have had our grandmothers and grandfather, and how our bond with them had always been special. So I hope you have enjoyed this chapter, and if you have understood it well, please share it with your friends. Keep sharing and keep subscribing. Thank you.